Today, we're going to use a laser engraver to create a 4-color CMYK, or cyan, magenta, yellow, and black woodcut print. So let's get right into it. Before we can cut our blocks, ink it up, and run it through the press, we need to create our image. I'm going to be using Procreate on my iPad to make the artwork. I drew this over the course of many nights while I was holding my sleeping newborn son. It really got me thinking about my childhood and all the time I spent in the garage working with my dad on cars. So this is something kind of a fragmented memory of what I recall from back then. I'm not going to go into the detailed process here, and if you're interested, I can make a future video of that. But a quick overview of the process is to take your image from Procreate and then break it into 4 halftone layers, one for each color. A traditional woodcut typically uses spot colors, where each color sits on top of the next. Maybe you play with transparencies or blend rolls, whereas the process color, or CMYK print, works by creating dots of each of the 4 colors in different amounts, creating an illusion of different hues. After it's prepped, then I can send it over to Lightburn, which is the software that controls the laser. I'm using Lightburn software to control my laser. It's fairly cheap to buy and it's really powerful. I brought in PDFs of each layer and set up the image to cut. I'm going to cut at 15,000 millimeters a minute and 95% power. Lightburn can do a lot to an image to prepare it for cutting, but since I did all my work in Photoshop, I can leave it as is and just test out different speeds and power. And I'm using an Xtool D1 Pro, which is a 20-watt diode laser for this project. And I'm going to be cutting it on 1/8" MDF wood. And here's a quick preview of what that's going to look like when it actually does the cutting. I tested out different lines per inch of my halftone to get the most quality, and I also tested different speeds: laser power, number of passes, air assist. Finally, I could do a small test of my image to see how it would print. And if you zoom in close to the print, it's really extraordinary how much detail you can really get. Now I'm setting the files from Lightburn over to the laser for each block. It took about 2 hours for each block of laser time, and to avoid alignment issues, I cut each one in its entirety in one session. At this level of detail, any starts and stops are going to show up in your final image. I also use MDF wood for this, which holds the detail really well, but it also releases a lot of glue and soot, which was really a mess to clean up off the laser. And finally, I could do a final trim just to get rid of a little bit of the extra border, so I didn't have to do so much carving later. For this project, I'm using Arnhem paper provided to me by Speedball. I want to give a huge shout out to them for collaborating with me on this project and providing the paper, ink, and brayers that I used in this project. They do so much for the printmaking community, and I really appreciate that. I really wanted to experiment and create this print using new and old technology, and they were so supportive and excited to be involved, so thank you so much. To prep the paper, I'm using a couple of the LinoCut registration jigs that I sell to act as stoppers for the paper, and then cut it down. Once the prints are dry, I'll trim them again to the final size. I'm using Turns-Burton registration pins to help get the exact registration, since each block has to line up exactly to create the right colors. The pins get taped to the press bed, and the tabs get taped onto each sheet of paper, making a very repeatable print. At this point, I wasn't sure if this project was going to work at all. I've spent weeks on the image, the blocks, the planning, but I need to do a full-scale test print. Thankfully, it came out exactly as I was hoping. I did a little bit of cleanup on the edges of the block since they were picking up a little bit of ink, and then we're ready for the final printing. I'm using Speedball oil-based ink for this print. I didn't have any prior experience with it, but I've used a lot of different inks, so I was excited to try a new one. One thing that people get worried about with oil-based ink is the cleanup, but I'll show at the end how easy it is and almost chemical-free to do. I used yellow, magenta, and black inks right out of the can as they were labeled process colors and worked great. However, I did modify the blue a bit more. It's not labeled as a process color or cyan, so I modified it to closely match another process blue that I had on hand. If this were for a client or an exact color matching, you could get more in depth with this, but it's not that serious here. After that, I could roll up each color and get ready for printing. I'm printing them in the YMCK, or yellow, magenta, cyan, and black order, which gives me the closest image to my digital drawing. So let's start with that yellow block. It's a pretty forgiving block to print, as long as you do lots of light passes with the brayer, so you don't fill the spaces between the dots. I'm using Speedball brayers, which are fairly soft, so you need to keep that in mind when inking. And here's a close-up of that inked block. There's a couple areas that are cut away that got ink, but that's fine since the paper won't get pushed that far deep into them. Now it's just a matter of clipping my prep sheets onto the tabs and running them through the press. I'm printing these on my Takash etching press, which basically has the available pressure to crush the block to nothing, so it's adjusted just to lightly kiss the paper against the block. And here's that first one done. Now it's just rinse and repeat. Typically, I'd let each print dry before printing the next, but I decided just to print them all at once. I'm going to do some more testing to see if it makes a difference, letting them dry versus printing them wet. With each block, the image comes a bit more to life. While this block's printing, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy videos like this. I really appreciate it. And let me know if you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future videos. I'd love to see what you have to say. And you can check out my shop if you want to see some of the laser cut printmaking tool holders and paper racks and things like that I make. Now at this point, I was starting to get a little bit nervous. I know in reality the final block creates the image, but I was worried that it was going to be a flop. But onward to the last block, which is going to be the black ink. I learned from my test prints of the black block that I can ink it up a lot more. So that's what I'm going to do here to get a good solid roll up. I can always add less in the future. So the downside of making products like the registration jig is I have a pile of failed pieces, or ones that didn't meet my quality standards. But on the good side, they make great stoppers for lining up print blocks like these so they're all in the same spot. And on we go with the last layer. After all that work and planning, here's the final image. I'm super happy with how it turned out, and I'm really looking forward to printing the full edition really soon. Now the last step of any print project is going to be the cleanup. I use a lot of water-based or water cleanup inks, but honestly, it can be a little bit annoying since I need water, which I don't have in my studio. For oil-based ink, I scrape up what I can, and then I just throw on a set of gloves, dump a splash of cooking oil, and use a paper towel to wipe everything down. Once all that's left is a film, I use a diluted cleaner to do my final wipe down, and I'm all done. It only takes a few minutes, and no super harsh chemicals are needed. And with that, I think we wrapped up this project. Thanks for watching! To keep up with the videos when they're posted, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to help support this channel, you can check out the Diode Press Patreon page, where I post behind the scenes photos, as well as other patron rewards. Thanks!